New card. What do you think?
Get over here!
Hadouken! That man is playing Galaga.
I understood that reference.
You shall not pass! So say we all. So say we all.
Pardon me?
It's adamantium tasting time, boys.
Well, make it so, number one.
All wings report in.
And welcome to your weekly interval. This is the Best Damn Nerd Show. I am your host, Microphone Alchemist, James Kincaid. With me tonight, Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd.
Sup, my dude?
We are continuing on with our Halloween horror fests, as I've noticed over the course of my life that sometimes I sort of just blend that word into two different meanings. So yes, we are doing all things horror in October and continuing on here with that in a very special episode as we're going to be diving into H.P. Lovecraft, the Cthulhu Mythos, and all of that good stuff.
A lot of tricky words there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I got to spit them out. Easy for me to say. But yeah, we are going to be talking about Lovecraft, really a long overdue episode, I feel like, in Best Damn Nerd Show lineage and lore. Wouldn't you say? I mean, we've touched on it over the years, but we've never done a full dedicated episode to it.
Yeah, we've definitely touched on it. And he's gotten a lot of airtime on our podcast, but yeah, never a dedicated show.
Yeah,
the board game alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's we are going to be talking about all of the influences of Lovecraft, which is very vast. So for October and in getting in the Halloween spirit, we got to talk about Lovecraft. But before we do, we have to start off with our Horror October Madness bracket update. We took to Discord. Again, that's bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord if you want to get in on the discourse and be a part of the voting for this sort of NC2A style of bracketeering that we got going on for some horror icons. And so just before we get into the results, Jeff, just your overall thoughts so far on the process. And I don't know, I think it's been pretty cool just to see the conversations that have gotten started.
The process is great. The conversations on Discord are wonderful because I like to get everybody's take. And I mean, it's good because some of the movies, it's been a while since I've seen them. So it's nice to see somebody who's maybe like a bigger fan represent the character.
Yeah.
And then as far as the results so far, you win some, you lose some. Because I voted and I voted early and then I saw where it all went. And then like with a few of them, I was watching closely because they were some pretty close matchups. And it did seesaw back and forth. I was like, oh, that would be great. Oh, no.
There were definitely some nail biters, and there were some,
and then a couple of not so nail biters.
Yeah, there are some ones that some matchups where the higher seed just bebopped and scattered all over their lower opponent, and rightfully so.
There goes your pick for the winner, Mrs. Voorhees, James.
That was not my pick for the winner.
I know you voted for her.
And so here's a little inside scoop on that whole thing. I voted for everybody to get it started, to make it easier on all you voters, because we do it via the emoji process so that you don't have to hunt and peck for the emoji. I just put them both on there. And then as voting got close to closing, I just unvoted whichever one I was not actually supporting. So I do have the final tabulated totals for round one.
My God.
Our one seed from side A, Michael Myers, defeated handily the 8th seed Pumpkinhead by a total count of 12-2. So, that was, pretty one-sided there. No surprises. Pumpkinhead was a, sort of a, very much so a dark horse, a Cinderella, much like the 8th seed in the side B bracket. However, that was one of my pet projects, so I was a little, we'll get up to that in a moment. The 2 seed Jason handily defeating Mrs. Voorhees as well, 13-2, an even wider margin than Michael Myers. So the matchup that I wanted to see.
Fucked his mom so hard, thought I was watching X videos.
It's staying in. That's canon now. Oh my God. But yes, no surprise as Jason defeats Mrs. Voorhees. Now the next one, the 3 seed Ghostface taking on the Leprechaun, the 6 seed.
That was a good one. That was one to watch this week, folks.
I was coming into today, or at least yesterday, I think Leprechaun, and we were recording this on a Thursday. I believe Leprechaun had a lead.
He did a couple of times. I was Irish jigging all over the place. I was thrilled.
Did you? So you voted for the Leprechaun over
I voted
Ghostface?
for Leprechaun, yeah. Yeah, so far, the people I voted for won. This is my first...
But Ghostface ended up pulling it out. Yeah, ended up pulling it out in close vote. Only 3 votes difference between the two. So that was definitely impressive.
You and Mark spoke so highly of Scream. I wanted him to fail immediately.
I knew that. Yeah, for spite. You were voting.
And
out
I
of
even
spite.
like the movies, but I don't. It's like I can't let Mark and James be that happy.
Yeah, out of spite. But so, laying all my cards on the table, coming into this this bracketology we're doing, even though it's a 3 seed, with the new movie coming out and it being more recent, my expectation was Ghostface to come out of side A to face Freddy in the finals of this. But now, after such an early scare, pun fully intended. I don't know if Ghostface is going to be able to advance.
I don't know if he's going the distance either.
Yeah, so that was, but like if it's like sports, sometimes an early scare, maybe it'll knock the cobwebs off. Yeah, exactly. So we will see, knock some of those cobwebs out, and we'll see how far Ghostface goes. But that was a really fun one to watch. And then Pennywise handily defeated Candyman. There was never really any doubt there.
I voted for Candyman.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I feel like the reasons for that were I was visualizing the more recent Pennywise more as opposed to Tim Curry, and then I don't know. I kind of felt bad for Candyman. And I was like, if we are talking like pure slasher, he fits more into that than Pennywise. And Pennywise isn't the only one on the list that he doesn't exactly fit the criteria. I mean, fuck, I guess you could have said that about the Leprechaun Man as well, but I don't know. I've had a feeling Candyman wasn't going to win. I was like, I don't know. I'm going to vote for him. Give him a
sentimental favorite.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, everybody's got their favorites.
Mary said something positive about him in the Discord, and I was like, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, that's true. And they're also definitely, I love the conversation that was going on in Discord about, involving other characters. And this is definitely sort of just a first go around as we're sort of working out this concept. And we will do some creative things with the eventual winners, or winner rather, I should say, and just how that all goes down. I'm looking forward to that. It will harken back to some Best Damn Nerd shows of yesteryear. And there will be other characters that we involve. Carrie is one that came up that we didn't involve, and some others.
I didn't think about that.
You could throw in, again, not typical slasher, but Samara from the Ring would be a fun one to involve in future. The Xenomorphs and Predator were suggested.
I was gonna say, it's funny, they don't know the debates that go on behind the scenes, but this was an idea that you had pitched a month ago or something like that. And I mean, it was a while where we were talking about who did we want to involve, what would it look like, how do we want to resolve this once all the votes are in and we're at the finals. And then what we want to do like in years down the road. And so some of the names they've thrown out, those were names we were kicking around, and I don't know, we convinced you one way or the other to do something else, because you had a couple of names that did not make the final cut.
Yeah, like Children of the Corn were originally on this list. Okay, so
Mark
let's go
and
to
I said no.
Oh, and so as we jump to the B side of the bracket, the big controversy from the Horror October Madness Committee that determined the seeding, with Chucky getting a 1 seed. Man, the listeners, they were nonplussed about the fact that Chucky got a 1 seed and Freddy got the 2 seed.
I mean, everybody knows. They were so nonplussed, they were a little minused.
Yeah, very good. Very good. God dang it.
Swim walk.
I love it.
But I would also, to further just back up Freddy, if you look at their win margins, Freddy was right there. Kind of like, I guess Jason did too, and he was also 2nd seed. The 2 2nd seeds really dominated their matchups.
They did, and that is one thing. I'm a little spooked about side A and just how strong a showing Jason had, because I want Michael Myers to come out of there, even though I thought coming into this it would be Ghostface, but now I don't know what to think.
Well, I think It was. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was Lucas who said we all know how this is going to resolve. It was either him or Tim Cool. I forget who said.
Yeah, I believe it was Tim.
Yeah,
the Freddy versus Jason.
Freddy versus Jason, and it's like
that's definitely possible.
I like the idea of like, here's my prediction so far for the A side of the bracket. I would like Mike Myers and Jason Voorhees to face off, since Jason, like we were talking about last week, is perhaps the most successful of the Michael Myers imitators.
Yes,
and then just have the two of them go at it. Depending on how you vote, Jason could definitely win that one. I don't even know who I would pick necessarily out of the two, because I do like them both.
Yeah, they both have their place.
I'm a bigger fan of Halloween, but I love the Friday the 13th movies. If we are talking about who could kick whose ass, Jason is stronger. I feel.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know
about that. I don't know about that. Michael Myers is pure evil.
I don't remember Michael Myers ever knocking anybody's head off with a punch, and that was a boxer.
Yeah, I don't know.
In New York.
In New York City. No, I go with Michael Myers all day.
And then I would like Freddy. I know we haven't done the entire B bracket yet, and I would like Freddy to face off against Jason, like they were talking about, because that would be cool.
It would be cool if you're taking the whole breadth of the Halloween franchise into account, though. When you start getting into like the cult that control them and everything in his power level, it does go super high up. You know, like
I saw Jason get upgraded in the future with Jason X, super sci-fi powers.
Yeah,
only Hellraiser has also gone to.
You know what? Michael Myers has better movies, so Jason sucks by comparison.
I got two words for you: Jared Padalecki.
Yeah, Jared Padalecki's great, but Michael Myers.
Oh, Paul Rudd in his like first movie.
Michael Myers. Donald Pleasance is Dr. Loomis. He's got these guys. Jamie Lee Curtis. Go with Michael Myers. Anyway, so onto the B side, as we were getting derailed here. The one seed, however you look at it, Chucky defeated
Seed of Chucky.
Yeah, the seed of Chucky, which is one, defeated Jack Frost, an 8 seed, handily, 12-3. I voted for Jack Frost. I was hoping for the big time Cinderella upset. I would have loved it if Jack Frost had made it into the second round. It would have been the story of the tournament, you know?
That would have just added more controversy that Chucky didn't belong in the first seed to begin with. It would have derailed the entire tournament. It would have
brackets would have been busted all over the place.
Too much doubt on the BDNS. I mean, we just came back a few months ago. We can't afford this kind of controversy.
I love it. Controversy creates cash.
Man.
Chucky is it was Eric Bischoff, but Chucky is moving on into the second round. Freddy, 1 seed 2. Freddy's coming for you, Ben Willis, the 7 seed, and this was the widest margin of victory at 14-1. I don't even know, like, to be honest, I wasn't expecting Ben Willis to get a vote with how it started, because for a while there, the only vote that he had was mine, and that was just so it was easier for people to click on the emoji to vote. Right. But he ended up getting 1 official vote, but no surprises there that Freddy just waltzed into the second round.
That's the I Know What You Did Last Summer guy?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And you told me this a week ago, and I didn't even remember.
Yeah,
so I would not have voted for him. So
to the ash heap
even if it wasn't against Freddy, come on.
Yeah. Well, maybe, as a 2 seed, I think actually the 2 seeds might have gotten just the more favorable matchups, so that's something to be learned. Then we get to our 3 versus 6 matchup on the B side. Jigsaw, the 3 seed, taking on Norman Bates, the 6 seed, and we got an upset. It was the first one, and this one was nip-tuck the whole way. They were tied at one point, but as a final tally, 8-7, Norman Bates upsets Jigsaw. Who did you have in that one?
I voted Norman Bates, but I would say this was probably my closest one. I could have gone either way. Last week I did talk about how I'm not a huge Saw fan. Yes. I can appreciate the existence of the movies. I understand why other people like it, but it's just not really my scene. And yeah, Norman Bates, I don't know, like historical, you got to at least let him have some sort of presence in the tournament. I'm looking forward to him moving on.
By the skin of, well, probably, one of his victims, Norman Bates is moving on. And then Pinhead, the 4 seed, taking on Leatherface, the 5 seed. Another upset. Leatherface. And you know what? Maybe we underrated Leatherface a little bit. Only a 2-vote margin there, 9-7. What did you think about how that one went down?
Broke my heart. I voted for Pinhead.
So did I.
I mean, I get it though, and like I said, this is where like the hypocrisy comes in. Where what I said about Pennywise, I'm not applying to Pinhead, and it's like Leatherface definitely is more of a slasher killer. Although I don't know those movies. Well, I don't know. Some of them he definitely is just slasher killer, and then other ones he's not as much of the big presence. But yeah, I mean, Pinhead's really no different than Pennywise.
Yeah.
In terms of like extra dimensional, all powerful being. You don't even necessarily beat them. You just sort of avoid them.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fine. Leatherface deserves to be in the tournament, so I can't be too upset about that loss. But I am kind of bummed just because just the visual presentation of Pinhead used to just creep me out as a kid. Like when you see him on the back of like horror mags and stuff like that. Like I just knew he was a part of something that's like, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't want to watch it.
Just his face. It invokes a feeling. It definitely does. Just like seeing that double VHS at Hollywood Video or Blockbuster invoked a feeling of dread. And we'll be talking a lot more about feelings of dread as we're going to be getting into H.P. Lovecraft later on in this episode. But let's preview the second round matchups as they stand now. So back to the A side. We have the 1 seed Michael Myers taking on the 4 seed Pennywise. I don't think that one's a given because Pennywise is very popular. Michael Myers is popular, but I feel like because Jason is such a successful imitator, he doesn't have the sort of tour de force popularity that maybe he once did.
Yeah, but I think that remake
maybe helps.
2 years ago, a year ago, I don't even remember anymore. But I mean, it did well. People were excited to have him back. Michael Myers has successful reincarnations every time.
Yes, that's true.
So that's true.
Yeah,
so I think there's enough people that are stoked to.
Yeah, Mark even liked Resurrection.
Yeah,
Busta Rhymes, terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
I've actually never even seen all of it.
Oh, it's yeah. Well, I mean, you saw far enough. They killed Jamie Lee Curtis in the beginning. It's stupid.
Yeah, that I know. Yeah.
And then the other matchup on the A side of the bracket is the 2 seed Jason going up against the 3 seed Ghostface. If you had told me a week ago, I would have thought Ghostface would have, at least stood a strong shot of getting by Jason. I don't think that anymore necessarily. I think this one's going to be, very, very close either way, leaning with, rightfully maybe Jason being the favorite in that.
Jason could win this whole thing.
Yes. And then on the B side, 1 seed Chucky taking on 6 seed Norman Bates. The upset city there. I think Chucky's moving on pretty easily there.
Yeah, I think Chucky is making the Frightful Four as well, and I'm excited for
the Frightful Four.
Yeah,
I love it. And then Freddy, the 2 seed, taking on 5 seed Leatherface. I also same result there. I think that one actually might end up being a little bit closer than Chucky versus Norman Bates. But
I think it'll be closer than Chucky versus Norman Bates. But I do think people love Freddy.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm trying to think like. When it comes down to the finals, who am I going to vote for? It might be Freddy.
Oh, yeah. So with Chucky versus Freddy primed to be on the finals of the side B.
That one. Yeah, definitely. But I'm thinking like the final. I'm not even considering Chucky a factor. I think Freddy is going to take side B, and then it's I don't know, Jason or Michael Myers. I'm not entirely sure. I'll know more maybe based on the votes this week. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, though, and it's been really cool interacting. Again, if you want to get in on this, it's bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord to get in on the action. But let's transition now. Let's get into H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu Mythos. And just sort of starting broadly, like why are we doing this episode? Who is H.P. Lovecraft? What is the Cthulhu Mythos? And H.P. Lovecraft to me, well, first of all, a little bit of disclaimer. Yes, we are aware that he was a horrible xenophobe and racist and all that stuff. But we're talking about him as an author and the sort of lasting legacy to the horror genre that he put out into the world. And to me, from my perspective, H.P. Lovecraft, I don't think I've ever felt like actually that sort of sensation of fear or dread more than reading Lovecraft's work. And that's like what has kept me coming back to reading more. It's what's sort of set me alive to seek out all of the other things within his world and within the universes that he created and were built out by others. But what sort of drew you to Lovecraft, Jeff?
I'd say it's the mythology, and I'd say it's just the worlds that he created. What I like about his style and a lot of the authors back then is that they would just be very open with their work and share it with one another. So, I mean, I ended up becoming a fan of H.P. Lovecraft before I knew who he was, just because you're introduced to a lot of those types of creatures or ideas and other things and other properties. And then once I started, I think it was the board game, which is where I became like officially a fan of H.P. Lovecraft. So Arkham Horror, which right off the bat, the basic game introduces you to a lot of key things of his, a lot of cool monsters, Elseworlds, and just like kind of the general setting and time period. And then the board game made me want to read some of his stuff. And then there are so many different collections of his work. I think I have everything on Kindle now, but even before that, all the Barnes and Noble collections, those huge volumes.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the things that I would go through. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to read all of that for the first time or see something that I recognized. Like when I found out about the Necronomicon coming from there, like that was very bizarre to me because Necronomicon just kind of existed. You know?
Well, that's a great point that I'm glad you bring up, because there are a lot of things that growing up that, by the time we were coming into our own, were already part of sort of the fabric of horror and the things that we got to know. You mentioned the Necronomicon, like the idea of Cthulhu and, some of like great old ones and elder gods and stuff. Like you hear about the elder gods and things like that terminology in Mortal Kombat and things like that. And even though it's not exactly the same, that type of terminology, that comes from the Cthulhu Mythos. And there are just a lot of things that, Dungeons and Dragons, the warlock making, pacts with these other dimensional beings and stuff like that. And that's all Lovecraft. And, it's the universe that he built. And along with others, you talk about the fact that the Cthulhu Mythos really, what it comes down to is collaboration with other authors. Many of them his contemporaries and others have built it out since. Yeah. But that is sort of a cool... like the first sort of, Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first sort of like shared universe that, that I know of is this Cthulhu Mythos. And that's pretty cool that like they had this like sort of pulp authors that were building out this really horrifying, bleak world that they were doing,
Yeah.
So that is definitely, what I sort of took from, H.P. Lovecraft, and like you, the games, the lore of Lovecraft, I think, is just so rich, and what has got me sort of so interested in it, and it keeps you thinking about it because it exists beyond the pages of whatever stories in the way that he's created it. Like the idea of these sort of like shadowy inner sanctum type cults and everything like that. It's all just very like, it can just, your imagination can run wild with it. And like the fact that Cthulhu Mythos, it encourages that, so it's just, it's very cool stuff. A lot of his stories have stuck with the both of us, and we're going to get into all of that. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we are going to dive deeper into the pages of the Necronomicon. We're going to talk about our favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories. We're going to be talking about Lovecraft on film, gaming, and much more on tonight's episode of the Best Damn Nerd Show. More on the other side.
Hey everyone, Chris Eglia here, CEO of the Tenno Media Network. I would like to say thank you for checking out one of our podcasts, but we need your help. You can support Tenno in a multitude of ways. By going to our website and checking out our latest podcasts, by buying some sweet merch, joining our Discord, or getting early and exclusive access to all content via our Patreon. Your support means the world to us, and you can find everything on our website, www.ten-o.gg. That's ten-o.gg. Thank you again, and now, back to the show.
Nerdosphere. It's the microphone alchemist Bimbo Jimbo here, and we want you to be in on the conversation with us. So sound off to us in our Discord, Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at the BDNS. And maybe you actually like the Star Wars prequels and sequels. Maybe you think the MCU should be a comedy open mic night on the big screen. Whatever you think, we love to feature the hottest takes from our fans on the show. So remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud.
It's me, Iron Nerd Min-Maxer, Hanzo Gonzo, inviting you into the Tenno Media Arena to see whose nerdiness will reign we're gonna get sued if you will triumph a lotly. Come check out all the battles on the Tenno Media Network Patreon, or you can just skip to the parts where Steve physically breaks something for no reason. See you there.
And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show, as we are talking about H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu Mythos. And I want to get into some of our favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories that we read and just sort of what makes them stand out to us. So, Jeff, I'll let you start in terms of if you had to pick a couple just in a first salvo of when I say, the best works of H.P. Lovecraft, what are your favorite stories of his?
I'd say, all right, well, kind of mixed. I don't know if I would argue that they're necessarily his best works. But
your
ones
favorites
that I like, is Shadows over Innsmouth for sure. It's just my absolute favorite. Dunwich Horror is one that I like. One that always stood out to me because it was one of the earlier ones I read, and it was just so bizarre, was the late Arthur Germain. And I had to look it up. I didn't remember the entire facts concerning the late Arthur Germain and his family, because that was such a disgusting and odd twist, and also is like a common theme that I saw with Lovecraft. It ends up like if you've never read the story, spoiler alert, one of his ancestors fucked a gorilla, and so they're like this hybrid people. And it's something that happens a lot in his stories. I'm thinking of Shadows over Innsmouth, because where you had the captain basically wedded one of the I don't even know what they call them. The
deep ones, I believe.
The deep ones, yeah, the deep ones. And then so that family, of course, is entire twisted and mutated, and it's like subtle mutations generation to generation, but they all have that loyalty to it, and they're just like corrupt. There's like this filth that you can't escape. It's very like Warhammer 40k to me. That is exactly what the Tyrannid cultists are like, where they infect certain people and then they're not going to invade the planet for like 8 generations. And there's already a bunch of descendants there that are ready to, they're living a normal life, and then they just rise up because they're all a part of the hive mind. And so that kind of thing really kind of grosses me out. Looking at it now, it's kind of fucked up. And it's like, I guess it's just Lovecraft talking about like xenophobia and like maybe racial purity or something like that. And, and it's like, okay, now I guess I see where he's coming from as far as why he wrote that. But to me, I just like
whoever's editing this, clip that.
Shut up. To me, I just like the monster horror aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And you mentioned Shadow over Innsmouth. That sort of inescapable fate is something that is very prevalent in his work. And just the sort of overall bleakness, and just that we're fighting a losing battle is a big theme. And Shadow over Innsmouth, I think, if I were to recommend one story to get somebody into it, is probably that one, because it's easy to follow. It's creepy. The scenes describing when they're trying to break into his whatever he's staying at the inn or what have you, and he's like escaping from these townspeople who are, again, have bred with these like underwater beings and everything, and they hate outsiders. There's a lot of the whole hating outsiders trope is so prevalent in Shadow over Innsmouth, and I have to wonder if that did that come from him? Like, was that something that he inserted into horror, and it just sort of became, ingrained into everything? But
I don't. In some New England small towns, anyway, I feel like I don't know.
That's just how they are.
Sometimes you just see that, yeah.
Back the way you came.
Kinda, yeah.
But I mean that is one of the quintessential Lovecraft stories. It's one of my favorites as well, and I definitely had that one on my list. It's great to go back and reread. It's a great creepy story to put on audiobook just to have in the background, during Halloween time and everything like that. And the twist at the end that he finds himself developing the Innsmouth look, and he feels the sort of the call of Dagon coming to him is it's really creepy, really well done. And it's just sort of the puzzle pieces that he gives you throughout that story. I love, and it's great. I like that you started out with, well, I don't know if it's as great as, but my favorites, because like one of my favorite stories of Lovecraft is The Thing on the Doorstep. And when I read it, and I was like, man, this is a great story. And then looking at like the Wikipedia entry, it's like it's critics pretty much unilaterally agree that it's one of his poorest works. And I'm like, what? I thought it was great.
Which one is that again?
The Thing on the Doorstep it's about the guy who essentially married that witch and warlock family, married into this witch and warlock family, and that they are possessing his body, and he has to, like, he essentially, the thing on the doorstep is what remains of him. He got to the doorstep to try and alert like his friend to what was going on, this like evil wife of his that was sort of like stealing his life force and slowly taking over his body. I think it's been a while since I read it. I believe it was like essentially her grandfather was slowly possessing him, kind of deal. Sort of like that what was that New Orleans movie, Skeleton Key. Yeah, so
or like Get Out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one that I definitely really liked a lot. Yeah, and it has some characters that you see like pop up in Arkham Horror, like Edward Pickman Derby. He's the protagonist of the story. Daniel Upton. And Ephraim Waite is the one that's sort of, transforming into him, I believe, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that was one that I thoroughly loved. It was sad too, because it was one instance of Lovecraft where he did a really good job of sort of painting this friendship between the two characters, between his friend that married into this horrific family and the main character that was trying to help him, kind of deal. And it was sad to see that he came to that end. Another one I really liked was Cool Air, which is about the protagonist is like taking care of that guy who he always has to be sort of chilled because he's decomposing. That was like the whole story. Yeah. What a creepy story that was. I mean, a lot of these could be sort of like, if you sanitize them on Are You Afraid of the Dark, they can be pretty, pretty quick little short stories like that. Call of Cthulhu, obviously, we're dancing around it, is one of the quintessential ones that if you want to get into Lovecraft, you have to read. I love the hopeless nature of everything, and it introduces Cthulhu, the great old ones, the Aurelia and everything like that that comes with it, and the fact that there are forces on Earth that are actively working to release Cthulhu upon the world and essentially end it. It's crazy, talking about it really sort of does a great job of painting that bigger sort of picture that there's this like connection to like creation myth about all of these characters. Like there's the cultists, on one side of the world that have a similar sort of figure of Cthulhu, and then there's that Inspector Legrasse, who I believe was based out in New Orleans, that found like a similar thing. And it's just a great story. I love that like the forces of evil that are trying to release Cthulhu eventually, I believe, kill the main character. If I'm not, again, it's been a while since or at least he's expecting his imminent demise coming at any moment.
I feel like that's what happened. I haven't read it in over a decade, but that's another thing that you have to get into if you're reading Lovecraft is most of the time the heroes do not win.
Yes.
Or at best you can hope for a stalemate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's just this very bleak sort of. It's like the Calvin and Hobbes line, like "I'm significant," screamed the speck of dust, or whatever. And that's very Lovecraft. And you brought up the Dunwich Horror, which is one of the few ones where they kind of definitively win. It's unique in that regard.
And that's what's so great about it. That, and also, I mean, they just grabbed a bunch of shotguns and drove over there and shot it to shit. Like that's how it was very simple. But it worked.
Yeah, and it is in that way, it's one of the ones where you get that more sort of physical interaction with the creature and stuff like that. A lot of times
Yeah.
you never get to that point in the stories, which is scary. It's frustrating. Do you sort of, I've read Edgar Allan Poe, but for me, Lovecraft, that creating that feeling of uneasiness, to me, I don't think that I've ever read anybody that did it better.
I feel you can give the edge to Lovecraft over Poe only because the subject matter is more disturbing. I feel Poe captures that mood without having to be so grotesque.
Gruesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's how I would put it. It's just the subject matter and everything is just so off-putting and awful. I mean, what's the I don't remember the name of it anymore. Maybe you will. I think it has to do with the Migo or whatever, where they're putting brains in jars, and that guy at the end basically gets also taken into there or whatever.
Yeah, what was the name of that story?
I don't know, but like I didn't really understand the nature of them until I read that story. I mean, I had only faced off against them in the board game, and it was just like, oh God, is that what they do? And like you're in the jar, your brain is in the jar, but that doesn't mean that you're dead, and they can plug you in and like talk to you and everything. It's just, oh God. And then they're shipping you off. That's another thing that I like about Lovecraft is the era he's from. The science fiction is very dated and it's kind of fun. And so in Lovecraft's time, that's when Pluto was first discovered. And I don't think it even had a name yet, or they weren't really even sure if it existed. And so like, that's where they're from. And then like, that's where they're shipping the brains off to. And then like, even just the nature of space and what space is like, he thought it was like, all the blackness is like a solid material, it's just, those descriptions to me, I really appreciate. It's just, it's kind of fun to know like what people used to like sort of believe. And then what's the science fiction twist to that. And it's like, yeah, now none of that matters. But at the same time, it's like this fun Elseworld. And I like it.
No, it's a great point too, because you imagine being a young person reading that when space was such an unexplained deal. It's just like everything up there could be something horrifying, just waiting, it just, it was just the whole world, outside of Earth, the whole universe was this sort of evil oyster that Lovecraft could play with however he wanted to.
Well, and I wonder how much like people believed in that stuff too. Cause I mean, you really have no idea what's out there. I mean, we still really don't. And then I remember like when I was learning about like Lewis and Clark in school, like Thomas Jefferson had books that he considered like at least somewhat respectable in his library that talked about volcanoes and dinosaurs on the west coast of the United States. And it's like, I need you guys to go over there and see what it's really like. And so, I mean, like, what the hell did they think of space back then? Yeah, maybe they did think, was it Yuggoth or was that the name of what? No, that's one of the names of the monsters, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. What the fuck did they call Pluto?
The Shoggoths. There's
I don't remember what the name of it was anymore, but it's like, yeah, it's not that far away. And it's like they just assumed there's some sort of fucking monster on there.
Well, it's like the old maps with the sea monsters on the parts that were uncharted.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Whisperer in the Darkness is when the Migo makes its first appearance. Yes.
Great
and
story.
Putting brains in the jars and everything like that. Some other ones, the at the Mountains of Madness, if nothing else, it's a great story, but it's worth it if nothing else for the influence on John Carpenter's The Thing, which we will get to momentarily. We have not mentioned Herbert West's Re-Animator, which is another one of those that when I read about it, near and dear to our hearts, but it's like Lovecraft scholars almost unanimously agree it is his poorest work or whatever. It's like,
I
really?
feel like that's got to be one of his most beloved, though. I mean, it's definitely popular.
Yeah. But I mean, I know
it has actual characters in it. I don't think you can really say that about all of Lovecraft's work, honestly.
Yeah, because it was an ongoing series in the pulps, and I know Lovecraft was like upset that he had to end each, on a cliffhanger and stuff like that. But I think that makes it sort of stand out in its uniqueness in his writing, and I think it really worked. I liked Re-Animator quite a bit.
I did too. I enjoyed reading it. It was one of those things that I knew about before I had ever read it because of
the movie.
No, not even the movie. I never saw the movie until I watched it with you.
That's right.
Oh, the role playing game, All Flesh Must Be Eaten. In the Pulp Zombies expansion, they give you like various scenarios, and it's very different kinds of zombies and stuff like that. And that was one of the spoof ones that they did, was like a Herbert West thing. It was really cool. So I read about that, and then it, of course, credits Lovecraft and Re-Animator, and it's like, this is the original source material. And it's like, oh, I want to read that. It wouldn't be for years.
One of the first Lovecraft stories I read, and one that still stands up to me, it is very Poe reminiscent, sort of Telltale Heart-esque, is The Rats in the Walls.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a great story, and he thinks that there's these rats in the walls, and it turns out that it's that whole like tainted lineage idea, that he actually was a part of this family that was raising human beings like cattle to be eaten, and again, those urges eventually get the best of him by the end. Really horrifying, very short, quick read. Definitely one of my sort of more favorably thought of Lovecraft stories. If nothing else, it was when I was really starting to dive into the genre. Are you a fan of Rats in the Walls?
I am a fan of Rats in the Walls. I was going to mention it, but I thought I had already mentioned like enough, not obscure, but like little lesser known ones with the Arthur Germain thing and stuff. I like it kind of like what you were just talking about, that it's very Poe-esque as far as it's just about setting the mood. Sometimes the low tech Lovecraft stories are some of the more interesting ones. You don't need the big supernatural thing or anything like that. You really just need a man and his, fractured psychosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will get more into that in terms of the that sort of the fractured psychosis that comes into play in Lovecraft stories. But let's talk about Lovecraft on film. We've already talked about on this show, being excited going into Lovecraft country, that excitement waning a little bit after the Comic-Con at Home panel, and then my excitement turning into horror, and not in the way that they intended, with just how bad Lovecraft country turned out to be. But there hasn't really been I feel like I am still searching for really great straight up Lovecraft adaptations,
Yeah.
and like there are things that are like influenced by it that are really cool but don't go all the way. But I really want some just straight up Lovecraft stuff. But there are a lot of on film adaptations and things that are heavily influenced. What are some of your favorites, or ones that you just want to make sure that we highlight?
Dude, it's before I knew who Lovecraft was. I had no idea what was going on. I turned it on like in the middle of it, and I fell in love immediately. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it was their version of Dagon or whatever, but it was very much Shadows of over Innsmouth. Before I had read the story or knew anything, I was playing Resident Evil 4 at the time, and so I was basically just watching this one guy versus like an entire city, or not even city, a town, and it reminded me so much of like the opening sequence there with Leon S. Kennedy, and it was just incredibly bizarre. And I was like, I love this. I was like, what is this? So that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed Re-Animator. I think it's kind of fun.
It is.
I definitely would like it to be remade. I know that I feel like that's a topic we're talking about later in the episode. But it's like, I think it's a good story. I think it's an easy story to adapt. I think it's a story that appeals to the masses. Like, it's just something that definitely works as a movie, or even just like, I don't know, maybe like you could turn it into a TV show if you did like some things different with it. I think they're interesting characters to follow. But yeah, like that one I enjoyed watching with you. I'm trying to think what else.
It's interesting. The Re-Animator as a series idea, I would like to see a more serious take on it. But however, if you did it as a series, it could be kind of like Dexter, or it could be kind of like iZombie. In terms of like the level of camp within it, I could definitely see
the bomb, dude.
I could definitely see that working though for Re-Animator.
Put it on the CW.
Yeah, it may be. I'd check it out at least, and then probably talk bad about it on this very show. So you never know what could happen. The Thing is a horror movie that we did not bring up, yet this season, because we were talking about slasher films, but. As much as I love Halloween for that subgenre, John Carpenter's The Thing is one of my favorite just straight up movies I've ever seen. I think it's Kurt Russell's finest work. I think it just
Ron.
What?
Captain Ron.
That's also good. Also good, but no, for me, it's
Gorillas, boss.
R.J. McCready and John Carpenter's The Thing, heavily influenced by Lovecraft and just the whole, again, the Mountains of Madness story and everything like that. What is your take on The Thing and Lovecraft's influence upon it?
Absolutely adore The Thing. I think it's an amazing movie. It's also an awesome board game.
I want to play that too.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. Infection at Outpost 31. It's a game that's right up the BD&S's alley. I don't know if it's my favorite Kurt Russell movie, but it's definitely up there. Same with Keith David. I love everybody who's in it.
Yeah.
As far as yeah. I'm a huge fan of his oatmeal commercials.
I'm a big fan of diabetes.
He's not.
No.
And then as far as Lovecraft's influence, yeah, obviously. If you want to talk about direct influences and like major films and things like that, then maybe The Thing is probably the best one.
Yeah.
Without outright being a Lovecraft story. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I love that movie. That was one of my favorite movie nights that we had done as well, too. R.I.P.
Yeah, pour one out. I will tell this story again. The Thing made such, and I've been watching it for years, but we were, it was the season and everything like that. And I was watching it, a bunch that season. I had fallen asleep. I was visiting my dad back home. And apparently I woke up, or I was still half asleep, and my dad was trying to rouse me, and I just kept saying, "You have to tell them it can become people." It seeped into my dreams. So I was clearly getting a little bit too far down the rabbit hole on The Thing. But you mentioned the Necronomicon, Evil Dead. That's a huge one, and
that's where I learned about it. Yeah, it was actually from Army of Darkness. I guess that's the first one I saw. But to find out that the Necronomicon was actually in books and everything like that was very bizarre to me.
and it was, such a, you're right, because it's like this idea is sort of when you see it there, and then, it is such a sort of intrinsic idea and concept within so much of Lovecraft's stories, and there's just, that is maybe the most recognizable thing from a piece of Lovecraft is when you say Necronomicon, people know, in broad sense that you're talking about some type of like evil tome, some type of evil text that you should not be trifling with kind of deal. I think that might be the most like signature thing to come out of the Cthulhu mythos.
I think it's the most widespread. Cthulhu is very popular now too, but one, it's hard to say the name. And then two, his fame and notoriety has been much less and more recent. Necronomicon, I feel, has floated around forever. And then I remember reading years ago about the Necronomicon and people talking about, just it popping up in different areas. It was in the card catalog at, I think, Yale University. Somebody had written in the Necronomicon as if though it was in their library, kind of like in Arkham University, where there actually is a copy of the Necronomicon. And it was just something that if you had looked up the Necronomicon, if you attended Yale, you would see that it's somewhere in the library. You just can't find it.
That's
I think it's
so
funny that
cool.
Slip that in. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, I definitely, and I'm glad you brought up Miskatonic University and Arkham and everything.
I have a license plate frame that says that I'm a graduate of Miskatonic University. I have been asked about it. I tell them it's just a small college in Massachusetts.
It's still on my Facebook that I am a graduate of Miskatonic University. I believe it's on my LinkedIn as well. I'm not I'm not positive. I should maybe take that off, but
that's why you get so many job offers.
Yeah, well, I got a first top of my class in occult lore studies. So, just the idea of this whole sort of fictitious world that has been created within it. I love the Miskatonic University sort of idea. I need to get like a school sweatshirt still, and I would definitely.
The only problem with that is they get too cute with it, as if though Cthulhu's their mascot at the university.
Yeah,
you got to get
agree.
something with just the name. Like my license plate frame, straight up just like a college license plate frame. You're just a graduate of the school. I like that. I don't want any of the goofy cartoon shit. No squid face things. People are going to ask too many questions. I want them to think it's legit.
We have to mention, I have not seen yet A Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage. I've heard mixed things about in terms of how well it was done. It's Nicolas Cage, which sort of, I love the guy, but it doesn't exactly inspire that it's going to be sort of a serious interpretation of some of Lovecraft's stuff. But maybe we should watch that this season and report back on it. But in terms of a story that you want to see done that maybe hasn't been done yet or remade, what's the number one sort of Lovecraft story you want to see get adapted?
Oh boy. It probably would be Shadows over Innsmouth then. I think that would be cool. I think what's also good about that one is it's kind of a mixed bag. Obviously, it's a bad ending for the protagonist, and it throws you as a reader, kind of off a bit. But it does talk about how the feds raided Innsmouth and kind of just like tore that town to shit, which doesn't often happen. And then that was a mechanic in the board game too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some positive parts to the story as well that I feel your average viewer would be able to walk away and say that wasn't too bad. I don't know. Maybe they would put an MCU twist on it, and there'd be a lot of jokes, and everybody's all right at the end.
Ugh, I wouldn't want. I don't go to laugh. I go to feel terror and dread.
No, modern audiences can't handle that, James. Got to laugh it off.
I have to agree with you. Coming into this conversation, though, that's the one. I know they've done it before, but I think a modern adaptation, setting it in the proper period still, because you're talking about it, so much of his writing works because of the lack of technology. You can't just hop on a cell phone and text a photo and stuff like that. So I feel like you do have to go very period with Lovecraft. But I think that story lends itself very much so cinematically. Again, talking about the scene of him escaping from his room, and the feds raiding it as what you think is sort of the climax. But then the real climax is that he finds out that he's one of them all along. And even in just that mystery, if you're not familiar with the story, when he talks to that old drunk, there's just like lots of key scenes that I see in my mind's eye that would really work as a scary movie. So I think that is the one too. I know there's supposedly a Mountains of Madness movie coming. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully it's done very well. But yeah, I would agree with you. Shadow over Innsmouth, and I'm still gonna hold fast and say that the Thing on the Doorstep would also be good. I don't care what the scholars say about it not being a good Lovecraft story. I like it. I'm gonna read it again. it's excellent. But yeah, Shadow over Innsmouth, a Call of Cthulhu movie. Done today, I think could really work too. But you run into, will everybody just be disappointed by how Cthulhu looks? Like, that is definitely something that I feel like is risky within adapting Lovecraftian things, is like, you're never going to please everyone with how the monster looks kind of deal, Well,
I mean, I kind of feel that way too. I'm a less is more person, and I know that doesn't really work so much with like modern cinema and also just like modern pop culture. I mean, I'm trying to think of like how I used to envision Cthulhu before I saw it stamped on everything. And I don't think it was exactly as it is now.
Yeah. But they have tried quite a bit of adapting Lovecraft's works. So I'm sure they will keep trying to do more with it. We are going to take one more break. On the other side, we are going to get into maybe my favorite part of H.P. Lovecraft, and that is Lovecraft and gaming. And we will also just talk about his lasting legacy on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show.
Hey guys, it's the loquacious anime and manga lover Jammers here. Now I have watched a lot of anime and I've read an abundance of manga, so you would think that I have a pretty interesting opinion on the culture. From classics like Golden Boy and Ghost in the Shell to masterpieces such as Psycho Pass and Gantz. Come and join me as I talk about the world of anime and manga, which has had a huge impact on my life. And who knows, whatever I talk about and recommend to you guys could become one of your favorite series.
Ammo with Jammers.
What up, nerds? Lore Master Tim here. We're excited to be delivering your weekly fix of nerd culture, but it's not enough. We need your life force to sustain us. So use those hot little hands to subscribe, rate, and review us on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or however you take your medicine. One of our favorite pastimes on the BDNS is reading fan mail on air. So sing us a song of hatred or love, and you may just hear your beautiful words being featured on an episode. That's why it's important, nay, essential, to rate and review us. Until then, as always, nerds, say it loud, say it proud.
Hi, I'm Mark Truex, and you may know me as the CSO of Star Labs from the Best Damn Nerd Show, and I'd like to invite you to join me and the Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd on another podcast of ours, the Ultra Monthly Podcast, a retrospective and monthly show where we dive deep into the Ultraverse, the 1990s superhero comic book universe from Malibu Comics, and we believe it's prime time. The Ultraverse got the love it always deserved. Are you an Ultraforce fan? We are too. You missed the glory of the 90s comic book boom? So do we. And are you obsessed with these Ultras? Damn right we are. And you can join us monthly as we geek out over classic characters like Prime, Mantra, Rune, and the Nightman. So jump on now to the Ultra Monthly Podcast and subscribe today on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere podcasts are found.
It's the microphone alchemist Bimbo Jimbo here, and when I'm not verbally super kicking Last Jedi fans on the Best Damn Nerd Show, or fantasy casting The Rock in another movie on the DLC, well, that's when I actually get to talk about wrestling. That's right, come join me in the Wrestling War Room, where I take my mic to the mat and launch my hot takes about the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT. The Wrestling War Room, which side are you on? And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show for one final segment with Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd, as we are talking H.P. Lovecraft, the Cthulhu Mythos, all the things we love about it, and sort of buried the lead here till our last segment, but we're going to talk about H.P. Lovecraft in gaming, and whether that is how we first got into Lovecraft or not. I think it is sort of the maybe most lasting sort of effect, the most prevalent impact on our lives is the sort of influences in the gaming world, both in tabletop and in video games. But let's start with tabletop, because there is, you know, as we're talking about, I'm just thinking about like the San Diego Comic-Con booths that are always sort of like dedicated to Lovecraft and his games and everything like that. What can you say about just Lovecraft and board games?
I think it just works because it immerses you in the story. You get to play those characters. The mechanics for the games kind of work as far as how you're facing off against them. The board game is Arkham Horror specifically. That is the board game that I started playing that got me into H.P. Lovecraft. And it's probably still my favorite thing that I have that is related to H.P. Lovecraft. Not only did it get me into Lovecraft, the book or the stories, it also just got me back into board game collecting in the first place, because it's not something that I was doing regularly. And then that was my introduction to Fantasy Flight games, or the game I was more active in with Fantasy Flight games. And then it started making me just go from there.
Yeah, Arkham Horror is one of those sort of tentpole board games that it's like my board gaming career before Arkham Horror and my board gaming career after Arkham Horror, because it was also sort of one of the first major ones that I was like, wow, we're doing some serious like nerdy board gaming right now. You know, like, you know, forget Settlers of Catan, forget what you think, you know, like this is like a whole other ball of wax when it comes to playing, you know, nerdy style board games, and the amount of setup time, the amount of rules. You know, we talked to, you know, Stephen Baker about Hero Quest and the beauty and the simplicity of it and everything. That is not Arkham Horror. It is certainly the complete opposite of that in many ways. But it also, to me, was,
and that's the allure to it. You know,
it is. It's
when
so
you don't
vast.
have games like that, all the different kinds of cards, the little dollar bill things that they had. I mean, I still have the first edition. I never rebought it and did any of the other things, and I like it. I like it exactly how it is. The only thing I regret is I didn't get the miniatures when those came out. But
yeah, I didn't even realize that the reissue now, it's not the little cardboard stand-ups. They actually have miniatures.
No, I think it is cardboard stand-ups. They had a bunch of like pre-painted miniatures though for every expansion. But I mean, it kind of added up. Like, I mean, now I could easily afford it, but back then I couldn't. And so I didn't buy any of them. And it's like, I regret it. I wish I had them all.
Yeah, I think so with Arkham Horror too, it's like that player versus the board dynamic that I had never experienced before.
And which is now everywhere. But yeah, back then it was still sort of a novel approach where you're not competing against each other. There's optional rules as far as different things you can do. But yeah, it's basically everyone as a team against, like you said, the board or time running out.
Yeah, and that, again, such a novel concept and such a perfect sort of Lovecraft dynamic because it is bleak from the start. Like there's so many games with Arkham Horror. It's just like, how are we like? We're just so hilariously outgunned, to borrow from the Avengers. It's it's really rare to win in Arkham Horror. I feel like if you're playing the correct way, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, it really does depend on which, like elder god that you're facing off against too, because some of them are like super tough. And then there's like one, I forget who it is, but if he shows up, like it's just game over. You don't even get to face him. That's it. Yeah, he devours everything, and it's just like shit, man.
Yeah. Azathoth, who is like sort of the representation of primordial chaos. And, again, you see Lovecraft and his ideas in 40K and everything like that. And it's just very cool. But yeah, Arkham Horror. And the other thing that, as a lore guy, I loved that board game for the Lovecraft characters that it creates and lets you be, like Joe Diamond, and that everybody has a backstory. It's just such like a richly well done game and such a great contribution to the Cthulhu mythos. Like I would read stories about those characters, like Dexter Drake, the magician, and they're like the Michael McGlenn, the mobster, and everything. Like there's a lot of cool characters in those games, and like when you get into the expansions too, like they add even more. It's just really cool.
You do know I have a Fantasy Flight Games book, which is nothing but a collection of short stories of all those characters.
You have mentioned it, and I would like to read that. I think you mentioned the Dexter Drake story is really good, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but there's a lot of good ones in there, and there's like illustrations and everything too, which is really cool. Not only did I like the backstories of the characters in the game, I liked if you go to different locations, you have location events, and there's event cards. That's how I learned about Innsmouth. Because if you're in like the market or like the shop or something like that, it talked about how you take sanity damage or you have to roll against it because a couple of people from Innsmouth came in and like just their look was so bizarre that it kind of threw you off. And I remember it was before I had read the story, before I started reading any of that stuff, and my brother and I were just like, "What the hell does that mean?" Because it talked about how they sort of look like fish. And
yeah,
it's like what the fuck. And then like then reading the story, it's like the Innsmouth look. It's like I didn't realize how popular it was, and now it's something I reference all the time. Yeah, I loved that. I love all the little things that they did in that game. A lot of nice little Easter eggs and references and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really sort of puts, because it is a board game, so it's in your hands, it puts Lovecraft's world, it's sort of very tangibly, like you can picture it better, so like I feel like I understand what Arkham is, what Dunwich is, what Innsmouth is better from playing those board games, because I feel like I've been there, like having drawing those encounter cards and sort of getting to know like what the characters would supposedly be like and everything. It really just enhanced the stories that I would either had read or would go on to read. It's just really cool like that. Like I love any encounter in I forget, like the Silver Lodge or whatever it is, and you can go into the inner sanctum and stuff like that. And they're clearly just a group of motherfuckers that are trying, like they're evil. They are like the evil sort of Illuminati group, and they're more than likely working with whatever cultists to try and unleash whatever unspeakable horror upon the world. But there's some really cool interactions that you can have there. Just a really awesome game. It is a little bit daunting to get into it. Like that's your night. Like you're gonna play Arkham Horror. Like start early, and commit to it. Do you have, because you talk about the expansions and everything like that, do you have a favorite sort of like character or particular thing that happened in game while playing Arkham Horror?
Ooh, other than that Innsmouth thing that I mentioned, characters that I like the Fed you can be from the Innsmouth expansion. I forget his name, but I like his look. Yeah. I think his last name's like Banks or something like that. He's really cool. I like Joe Diamond from the original, and I like the rookie police officer.
Tommy Muldoon, yeah.
Tommy Muldoon. I knew it was Muldoon. Is that from Innsmouth or is that from Kingsport?
I forget. I think it's Innsmouth.
It might be Innsmouth, yeah. And it's like, so those like were the guys that I like to play the most. I'm trying to think. Story-wise, the first time I played Innsmouth, I was really good because since I was the Fed, it kind of works really well with that expansion. Because with the expansions, you just find new ways to lose per se. And so like one of them is like, you know, the rising tide, and then like them creating like a larger army. But if you can put clue tokens down, you can call in the feds to break it up and to take out the town. And if you are the fed character, it's easier to generate clue tokens, especially if you're not in a location, like if you stay on the road. And so I was doing that, and I was just kind of holding that back the entire session. And like that worked out really well. And then I played it another time with some other people, and somebody else was the fed guy, and I told him what to do and he didn't do it. And then that's how we ended up losing. I was like, I told you how you're supposed to do it with that character. Now we're all fucked. And like, he was surprised. I was like, I fucking told you, but oh well. It was my way of playing and not necessarily his way. And so we ended up losing.
Yeah. clearly over it. You know, you don't hold it great. Yeah. I mean, it can spiral out of control very quickly in that game for sure. Yeah, it's gosh, it's just. Yeah, I'm thinking about trying to. I have like one. I think there is one like Yig. I think is the one like great old one like that when it's unleashed is like kind of not easy to defeat, but is more straightforward. Yeah. So if you've got enough weaponry, you can defeat him and everything like that. But usually, if the horror wakes up, you're just completely screwed.
Yeah, you technically can face off against it, but man, is it hard. There was one time, I don't remember which one we were fighting.
Cthulhu regenerates health, which is really like so unstoppable
because he has so much health to begin with. We beat whatever it was we were facing, but it was just like, God damn, man. They're like, it really came down to like the last person, and it was hard. And who knows, maybe we weren't following all the rules correctly. We probably did lose, but damn, yeah, the game gets incredibly tough. I know my brother is a huge fan of the board also kind of changes as the game goes on, and like
shops get closed down.
The maniacs actually become more powerful. People get scared away. Like my brother's a huge fan of that mechanic, and like he talks about that. That's like his favorite thing is just how much Arkham can fall apart before everything really goes.
That's the most frustrating part about it for me is because I love the lore. So I love, getting to know, getting allies and stuff like that. And, figuring out what all they're about.
I love going to the boarding house. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Ma's boarding house. And I love just the sort of every character has their sort of like story effects. Like I think they might have added that in later expansions that they have sort of like side missions that they can accomplish and they either get a reward or if they fail, they get a penalty kind of deal. But I have to shout out the I don't even know what you want to call it. It's like an app or a gaming supplement called Strange Eons. And you can create your own Arkham Horror characters, and it even has mechanics built into the system where it tells you whether or not it's balanced or not. So it's like it's all parameters based on the stats and attributes from Arkham Horror, and so you can create your own ability, and it'll tell you like we can't really like determine whether or not this is balanced sort of deal, but we'll like trust you or whatever kind of deal. But if you like boost their stats too much, it just like stamps an unbalanced on it or whatever. But it's like I spent a lot of time creating characters on Strange Eons that I've never played or anything with, but it's like I did like an old-timey boxer, so like his like prowess came into like hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that, and I wrote like stories for each character, so like same with the winning, like the victory and the fail condition kind of deal. It's really cool. If you haven't checked out Strange Eons, definitely recommend it. And it's
make all the BDNS hosts. We can go against the
I did
old gods. Oh, you did. Awesome.
I did. I have them somewhere saved on a hard drive.
I hope I'm not balanced.
It was a couple. No, you were OP for sure. Because originally what I wanted to do was do like BDNS Arkham Horror and a Pacific Grove Arkham Horror, which is where I came from. So like they're definitely characters from yesteryear in there, including executive producer Adam Zika was a character, and he also got into Arkham Horror, and he would always he picked the salesman Bob Jenkins, who is I guess one of the most poorly reviewed characters in Arkham Horror, I believe, in terms of just not being a very good character to play as.
He picks his characters like he picks his movies.
Yeah, exactly. But Arkham Horror is definitely a great one. Elder Sign is another big one. Literally, Call of Cthulhu pops up in like every iteration of Lovecraft, be it film, TV, gaming, whether it be tabletop or video game. There's always a Call of Cthulhu game, several usually. But Mansions of Madness is one I came to after Arkham Horror. It has a lot of the same characters in it that you see in Arkham Horror, like Joe Diamond, I believe, is in it.
Yes, he's in it because I even played as him. Yeah.
Michael McGlenn, the professor, his name escapes me, the researcher.
And the salesman's in it because I think Zika even played that character when we played together. Wait, did Zika?
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. But I love Mansions of Madness. I actually think it might be better than Arkham Horror because it's
son of a bitch.
It's putting you into a set sort of Lovecraft tale. Like it has sort of these confines in it, and me or whoever is playing is sort of like the dungeon master is making these story decisions depending on the scenario, and that changes the victory conditions for both whoever the DM is and the players, and it changes the overall narrative of the story. And you go around this game board that you build out trying to find clues. You've played it. What do you think of Mansions of Madness?
My opinion on the game has changed. When I played it that one weekend, and I played it many times with various people, at first I kind of didn't like it. I thought it was a little too difficult. But then, like, looking back, since it does tell you a story whether you win or lose, it's just kind of a fun and interesting narrative. So I do like it overall. Those were some of like my favorite stories from that trip. The Migo captured my brain and Davis's brain.
Yes.
We were that husband and wife couple that were investigating things. Zika and I were playing, and then I think Zika had to leave, and then Seglia took his spot, and then played the rest of that character. Or Tim Cool played Seglia's character.
Yeah, maybe that was
in a different one. And then Tim Cool and I actually won. That was the first time I won. We had to go rescue the old professor's friend from that cult.
Yeah.
And Tim was Joe Diamond, and I was what's the professor's name? I can't think of it.
His name escapes me as well.
Yeah.
Harvey Walters.
Harvey Walters. Yes, that's right. And yeah, it was some bitch that I used to fuck. There was a whole backstory.
Yeah,
that we used to do. And fighting the cult, that was great. And then there was like that one option where it's like we knocked one of them out, and then we could disguise ourselves as a cultist. It reminded me of like Tintin.
Yeah.
And goddamn, that was so good. Yeah, that was the first time we won. And then there was one where I played, I think, just by myself against you. And I think like the entire Eastern Seaboard was wiped out by like some Cthulhu tidal wave. It was something absurd. Or just everything got wiped out. It was like the end of the world.
I forgot what it was. You guys, because that is the one thing we spent all this time setting it up and making these choices, and then very early on, you guys opened up just the wrong door, and the thing that was locked in there got out and destroyed the world essentially. So it was just, and that was the end of the game. That was it. That was the one I was like, it's kind of a bad dynamic. They should have done something to protect against that, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, I guess, in the Lovecraft world.
Yeah, that's why you can't even be mad at the game, because it's like that's almost like the canon ending right there. So
yeah,
you gotta
for
just
sure.
go with it. But yeah, it's a pretty cool game. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, and there's expansions have come out for it, and that's the one thing with any game like that. Just like Hero Quest, is you want more replayability, you want more quests and things like that. And the cool thing is like you can make different choices within each scenario that does change the gameplay. Like you're talking about rescuing the professor's friend or whatever. There are choices within that, like where is this body buried, or what is the motivation of the cult kind of deal, and that changes the whole story and what the objectives are. I played it recently, actually, getting ready in preparation before Lovecraft Country, because I really wanted to get into the spirit of it. Played it with Davis's cousin Lauren, actually, and it came to a draw because the whole like mansion got set on fire, and like neither of us fulfilled the win condition, so it was just like a lose-lose situation. But it was like the cultists, trying to free this horror upon the world kind of deal. I believe a Shoggoth is what they were trying to do. But it's a very cool game, and there's just a lot of great Lovecraft board games, card games. Davis and I played. I think it's just called Call of Cthulhu. It's like a playable sort of board game, card game sort of that builds out. And again, the same characters pop up, similar type of storytelling, but it's very dynamic. I might like that one the most of all because it is just so easy to just shuffle up and deal and get into. And like that's, time's at a premium these days, I feel, for all of us. So it's nice to have something that you can just jump into, and we're in the world now, and it's still just as rich kind of deal. So I'd love to play that again. But let's go to video games. Have you played any great computer or video games that were Lovecraft inspired, or maybe ones that you didn't think were so good? Because there's definitely there's some issues with some of them for sure. There's like some near misses, kind of like the TV and film adaptations, in my opinion.
I have not. I don't think I've played any video games that are actually related to it in any way.
That's surprising to me. So there's that recent-ish Call of Cthulhu game that I know we were talking about the trailer and we were very excited about. It got sort of perpetually delayed.
That's what turned me off from it, because I think we could have even played together. Like there was a co-op mode or something like that, or at least it was originally promised. I don't know if everything actually came out with the game. But yeah, once something's like in production limbo like that for too long, it just, I don't know, too many red flags.
I played it because it like I used to check up religiously on when it was coming out and was always disappointed. And eventually I just sort of stopped checking, and then I popped on one day and I was like, oh, it's out, and it's been out. And so I started playing it. I was very excited at first. In my opinion, the gameplay dynamics are a little clunky. There's definitely some cool, creepy, scary elements to it and everything like that, but it just it wasn't it was okay, but it didn't hold my attention very long. Got kind of repetitive. Starts out great, but it got kind of sort of faded along the way. However, in my opinion, and this is maybe my first sort of exposure to Lovecraft in gaming, and maybe in general, is a game for the GameCube called Eternal Darkness. And you've heard me talk about it at length. It is one of my all-time favorite video games. And and you know what, in terms of the amount of time I've actually spent playing it versus watching it, that ratio is so off. I've spent most of my time watching other people play Eternal Darkness. I don't think there's a game I've had more fun watching others play than Eternal Darkness. And so if in that respect, it is sort of unique for me among, just the pantheon of games that I love. And it is steeped in Lovecraft. It starts out with a quote from Edgar Allan Poe, and there's these several like ancient ones that have sort of been vanquished or put to sleep, and all these things that are conspiring against the human race that are coming about. There's traveling, through different characters' point of views throughout various periods in history, as they're encountering these horrible monsters and stuff like that. And this is where the sanity meter came into play. And like, so there are things that happen in this game where like, one of the most screwed up one, and I think I've talked to you about this before, it's where the game, if your sanity gets to a certain level with the character, the game takes on like a mind of its own, starts deleting your save files, or at least you're under the impression that it is deleting your save files. And that is just a terrifying thing to watch the first time it happens, Yeah,
I used to read about the game in Nintendo Power, and they talked about that, and I thought that was like the coolest mechanic I had ever heard of. And I didn't play the game, and I was like, if I ever did, I would have liked to have not known about that and just experience it in real time, because that is insane. I think it comes to like a certain set point where if you've logged in like a certain amount of hours, it's going to pull that trick on you, and it's just like, what the fuck? Like when you're at a point of no return where it's like, if it deleted it, it would ruin not only your day, but it's like it would get to the point where it's like, am I even going to pick this game up again? Because that's just way too much invested.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. If that were legit, and there's just other great things too. Like as your sanity goes down, you'll hear things. The like ceiling will appear. Like you'll walk into a room and it's like you're walking on the ceiling. All these different things, and again, very Lovecraftian type characters. Like my favorite one from the whole game, Maximilian Roivas, Revolutionary era American from the main family that's in the game. So it's his house. It's in, I believe, Delaware or Rhode Island that they're living in. And he goes completely insane and is convinced that his house, like the workers in his home, are conspiring against him and are actually, possessed or whatever. And there's different ways that it can go about. He's half right. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And as the game, he killed them all. And it's like, and when you inspect like their skeletons, you see like, it's like, oh, this one was just like a husk and it had this other thing. And then, but some of the ones he did kill were actually innocent people. So it's pretty.
You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Yeah. And like his story ends with him just like screaming in this insane asylum about how the darkness is coming and everything. And his, again, like the Lovecraft story element of that there's this whole underground city underneath the mansion, like with these horrible creatures and stuff like that. So Eternal Darkness, if you haven't played it, definitely check it out. I love it. The Sinking City is another one I haven't played, but I've heard that's very good. But I just want to put the question out here because there are so many games in the, both board games and video games, computer games. Is the gaming world sort of the most enduring part of the Lovecraft legacy, in your opinion?
I'm going to say no. And I think it'll always be literary in nature. I think it's just that it lends itself so well to different kinds and styles of games. And I think it comes down to people want to be in the world, and they get more interactive if it's not a book, but actually something that they're able to manipulate and move around.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that, when you look at the Lovecraft community and stuff like that, I think I see more references to like Call of Cthulhu, the games at large, than I do really the story anymore at this point. And not to say that the literature isn't, obviously, I mean, his works of literature are what started and all and everything like that. But I think almost what is more talked about now are sort of the role-playing elements of it, and you talk about, like, we haven't even mentioned Shadows of Brimstone tonight, and that has Lovecraft influences in it. And, you see it throughout various things.
Yeah, but I'm always going to see that more as a passing fad. They're not always going to be making Call of Cthulhu board games or card games or anything like that. The video games, for the most part, have been commercial failures. I think it's going to be the stories and then the fact that those characters pop up in other people's works as well.
Yeah. And, another one, I mean, talking about Cthulhu popping up in South Park and everything like that. It's just, great, yeah. And he's just really everywhere. So as we are wrapping up tonight, what do you think is sort of like the Cthulhu mythos and the Lovecraft legacy?
I think because it touches on just like a lot of primal emotions and primal fears, the unknown, enemies among us. You mentioned it before. You can't escape your fate. Things like all of that is like, it's very resounding, and you're definitely afraid of some of those things. I feel it really touches the reader intimately, and it can be terrifying.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, again, reading a collection of his stories, like I got that Necronomicon or whatever collection of stories at one point.
That one, yeah.
And reading it alone, I'll always vividly remember this because my dad and I had driven up to Portland, Oregon to help my grandma at the time, like repaint her house and stuff while she was still alive. And so it was this really old house, and I'm like down in the basement where the guest room was, reading these Lovecraft stories by myself and just getting those sort of heebie-jeebie feelings while reading it and loving every minute of it. We talked about last episode, like, the love to feel scared, and it makes you feel alive. Like, and that's what I love about the Cthulhu mythos and reading those things, because he did such a great job of that just sort of palpable feeling of like what's coming. It's almost like the music in a horror film. You can almost hear it when you're reading a Lovecraft story. And he created this world that is so malleable. Others added to it. And he was very supportive of that. Others, since their lifetimes have added to it as well. But he created such a distinct vibe and feeling that it's been pretty well received because like what works or doesn't work within that universe, because they did such a great job of defining what it is in the time. And that's just a really cool thing. And like a lot of times like collaboration or whatever, it doesn't necessarily work, but the Cthulhu Mythos was built upon collaboration and adding your own story elements. It's kind of like going around the campfires, like, well, and then what happened, kind of deal. And that's really cool. And I just thoroughly enjoy that creepy cosmic horror world that they created. And so this has been a lot of fun talking about Lovecraft, talking about the Cthulhu Mythos. That is going to do it for this edition. However, I will remind you that our second round matchups in our Horror October Madness bracket: Michael Myers versus Pennywise, Jason versus Ghostface, Chucky versus Norman Bates, and Freddy versus Leatherface. We will post those matchups in the Discord, bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord. Have a great week, everybody. And remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud.
Hey everyone, Chris Seglia, CEO of the 10 Media Network here. Thank you so much for listening to our content, but we need your help. Please rate us 5 stars, subscribe, and give us a shining review wherever you listen to this podcast. It really, really helps us out. And one more thing, please tell a friend if you can. Tell them Tasty Steve, Hanzo Gonzo, Markman, Rip, Ricky Replay, or someone who everyone loves sent you or something. That might help. Anyway, again, thank you for listening. And if you want more, make sure to check us out at www.ten-o.gg, www.10o.gg. You're listening to the 10-O Media Network.